I had picked up a photo. It looks like the hand of a Grim Reaper. A dark, shadowy figure walked right across the mess hall. We have a ghost on video.
My ghost story began when I visited the Battleship North Carolina to interview the night watchman. I'm the lead anchor and writer and director and co-producer with Mike for an internet-based television show. And we travel to a lot of haunted locations and do interviews and collect the history from the locations to put together an episode.
I had read up on some stories that the Battleship North Carolina is one of the most haunted places. So we decided to look into it.
When you first pull up to the ship, it's a little bit intimidating because it's a lot bigger in person than you think it will be.
And I was like, wow, this is overwhelming.
When you walk across the launch onto the ship, you realize the massive space of the deck. It's huge.
The history of the Battleship North Carolina is pretty extensive. It was a highly decorated ship in World War II. It was hit by a torpedo. Two of the men who passed away during the torpedo hit on their way to man the guns died. We got in and we set everything up, and for the most part, it was relatively quiet for the first part of the night. Later on, I had gone out onto the deck, and I was just randomly taking photos of the outside. I didn't notice at the time, but I had picked up a photo of what looked like a hand with finger outstretched like it was pointing. I almost couldn't believe it. It looks like the hand of a Grim Reaper.
You can actually see in the picture what looks like 3 of the fingers folded over and then a thumb and an index finger pointing.
It was possibly the spirit of one of the men who were killed when the ship was hit by a torpedo. I did get uneasy when I was about to go in and go down to the mess hall. I'm looking down a very, very narrow staircase in pitch black dark.
There are no lights on down below deck. You feel like you're just walking into nothingness.
There can be times where you're walking down these corridors or going through some of the porthole type areas, and you'll stop and you can still hear footsteps. You can absolutely hear what sounds like things walking up behind you.
I would hear 2 to 3 steps behind me, click, click, click. And I stopped and I looked around and looked behind me and there's no one there.
There are times you can be walking down the hallways and you hear full conversations when there's nobody else on the ship.
If you're all standing together in one room and no one is talking, and it's after hours and the ship is closed down, there's really no explanation for it.
Later that night, we put an audio recorder in the infirmary, and later on, I listened to the audio. It was completely silent, except for one thing. A deep male voice said, "Patterson." There was absolutely nobody in there, nobody around for hours. We never went into the infirmary except to set the recorder down and to pick it back up.
The tone of the voice is menacing, pretty creepy.
Later that night, we visited the brig. On the wall, written in blood, was the words, "Patterson was here."
We were all stunned to make that connection between the EVP and the writing on the wall. No one knew he had that EVP. It's very unlikely that that's something that would have been planted.
It does show that there was somebody with the name Patterson that had some type of strong drawing to the ship that he would remain behind.
One of the crew members was snapping photos as we're moving from one location to the other. And something interesting showed up in one of the photos. It looks like this very strange illuminated figure. It appears that a woman is standing in the photo.
It actually looks like it's the shadow of a woman with her hair in a bun standing behind this self-illuminated apparition. Women weren't really on these type of ships, so it's kind of strange to see something like that. One of my investigators was down in the mess hall. As she started to pan her camera, she saw what looked like a dark, shadowy figure walk right across the mess hall. She called out, and nobody was over there.
Who's that down there? Is anybody down there?
When we got the video camera back and we reviewed the footage, we were like, wow, we actually have something here. This is something that looks like we've caught a ghost.
When Mike first came to me with the evidence of the shadow figure, the first thing that goes through your mind is, could it have been that someone walked past the iron light that she was holding? But you rule out any other possibilities when the shadow continues to walk through.
There were no crew members or anybody else on that particular side of the room. To me, that felt like that was one of the biggest things that we could have done. We have a ghost on video.
I do believe that it is a true piece of evidence. When you can't recreate it and when you rule out all of the different possibilities and you're left with no explanation, that's the definition of paranormal.
I've been in a lot of haunted locations, and I would have to say that the Battleship North Carolina is one of the most haunted places I've ever set foot in.
I don't like to jump to conclusions or immediately label something as evidence or haunted. You've really got to do a lot of debunking to rule out any other possibilities. I do believe the shadow figure is real. There are ghosts and spirits on the Battleship North Carolina.